Check, 1, 2. Hello. You guys got me? Let's go. This is weird. It's just you guys. It's crazy. Okay, well, hello. Thank you guys for coming to the Nord Training Workshop. I'm super excited, and I'm hoping you guys are excited too, because this is going to be fun. Let me just start by praying for us real quick, if you guys don't mind. I always love to invite the Lord into anything that we do, but especially something like this. So if you guys will bow with me, we'll pray together. Father, thank you for this space that we have, Lord. And man, just the resources that you have given us, that you have placed in our hands, Lord. And we just ask right now that you would help us to be good stewards. Would you help us to just continue to grow and learn and train ourselves to be vessels for your kingdom and for your glory, Lord. So tonight we just ask that you would be with us as we learn a very specific, very niche thing, Lord, but something that I truly believe that you care about, and something that helps us to just make what happens on Sunday that much more meaningful and that much more special, Lord. And so we know that all this is just noise without you. And so we invite you into this space and just thank you that even right now you're preparing us to continue to grow and learn for your kingdom and for your glory. We love you, God, and give you this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, y'all. Let's get into some Nord training. Hey, let's go. Different camera angle. Come on now. Can you guys see this? Is this good? Everybody can see it? Sweet. So let's just talk a little bit about the philosophy, because I think it's really important for us to have a language to talk about this kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, the Nord is just a tool, right? This is something that helps us to do what we do on Sunday mornings that much better. And I think some of us might be wondering, why should we care so much about details that aren't, necessary perhaps to the Sunday morning experience? There's a couple passages in Exodus that I really love to highlight, especially when talking about the creative aspect when it comes to worship. So at the end of the book of Exodus, right, the Israelites are preparing to build the tabernacle, they're preparing to build the Ark of the Covenant, all these different things that are going to be the marks of God's presence in their life. And there's a specific passage in Exodus 35, it says, all the Israelite men and women who were willing brought to the Lord free will offerings for all the work the Lord through Moses had commanded them to do. Again, in Exodus 36:2, it says, then Moses summoned Bezalel and Aholiab, who were just some craftsmen and some workers that were skilled, and every skilled person to whom the Lord had given the ability and who was willing to come and do the work. So I hear these passages and I'm just reminded that we're not called to just kind of, give a so-so or an okay job, right? But we're called to give as the best that we possibly can, right? Our free will offering to the Lord to make what happens here on a Sunday morning that much better. So I think of learning all the different things on the Lord as my free will offering with the tool that I have been given to steward and to handle. And so what's cool about all of that stuff is the next 3 chapters of Exodus is basically the minute specifics of how they built everything that God commanded them to do. And it's cool because at the end of that passage, right, they've done everything that God commanded them to do down to the very smallest detail. And so in Exodus 40, the very last chapter, it says, then the cloud covered the tent of meeting and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And so I just think for us, God is pleased to dwell and to rest upon the things that we are obedient with. And when we offer those things up to him, he takes it and does way more than we can ask, think, or imagine. So just be encouraged by that. Continuing on with this philosophy thing, it's important to recognize that musical worship specifically is a highly engaging form of worship, right? It's a sensory experience and it engages all of our different senses, which is why the Nord is such a powerful tool, right? It allows you to tweak and to dial and adjust things in very fine detail so that you can serve the song, you can serve the moment, and ultimately you can serve the church. That's what this is all about. And so my hope for us is that we would just be good stewards of the tools that we have at our disposal. But in order to use the tool, you have to know the tool, right? So let's get into the nitty-gritty, guys. I'm really excited for this. Let's just start with the basic layout, okay? I think you guys are all pretty much familiar with this. You've sat up here and done this many times, but I just wanna make sure we all kind of know how this thing is working, where things are at, especially when we need to go and make adjustments or we need to troubleshoot or anything like that. So the basic thing, first and foremost, you've got your instrument engines, right? So you've got your organ, which is way over here. We're not gonna worry about that right now because for us, that's not a concern right now. We're primarily focused on the piano and our synth engine, which is ultimately where our pads are coming from, right? So we've got our piano, which is over here. We've got our synth, which is over here. Okay, we've got a whole bunch of effects panels. I don't know if you guys have ever messed with any of that stuff before, but we will talk about that a little bit tonight. We've got effect 1, effect 2, which those two have different options depending, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We've got delay, which is a fancy word for echo, basically. It's just repeating what's being played if you want to dial that in. You've got an EQ section. Don't worry so much about the amp sim, if you guys can see where it says that. We're focused on the EQ section, which is gonna allow us to shape the tones of our different sounds, whether it's a piano or a pad. And at the very end, you've got a compressor, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's a tool that allows us to kind of squash the dynamics of our sounds. So when we're playing soft or we're playing high or soft or loud, it's gonna keep things kind of at a consistent volume, which is really helpful for our lovely front of house people when they're trying to get mixes to sound right. And then we've got reverb, which if there's any one effect that makes worship what it is, it's reverb, right? It's the washiness, it's the ambience. That's where all that cool stuff comes from. So those are our effects panels. And in the very middle, we've got kind of our main menu, right? This is where we're gonna select our different programs and our patches. We've got the store button, which allows us to save some of the changes that we've made, this big red button right here. And then we've also got our A and B panel selectors, which I think I've mentioned this to some of you guys, like during different Sundays or whatever, but I wanna make sure we all kind of understand this thing. This A and B panel section right here is really, really important because what it allows us to do is basically get 2 exact copies of everything that's going on up here. So we have a panel A, which can have, if you want, it can have an organ and a piano and a synth running at the same time. And we can do the same thing on a panel B. And so we could have all playing at once. We could have 2 organs, 2 pianos, and 2 synths. That's one way to do it. And if you want to put both panels together, all you do is simply press them both at the same time. And then you'll notice one of them is flashing. That's the panel that you're currently going to be messing with. So panel B right now, if I wanted to make any adjustments, right? I can adjust the piano, I can adjust the pad, whatever. Switch over to panel A. Now that one's blinking. Same thing. So I know for several of you guys, you might have run into issues in the past where you're playing something and you hear a weird pad sound coming out or whatever, and you've like turned off everything on panel A. You're like, what's going on? There shouldn't be any other sounds, right? Chances are there's something going on panel B as well. So you have to kind of be aware of those things. If you don't want to have those 2 things layered at the same time, simply press both. Now you've just got one, okay? So 1 panel A or 1 panel B. If you're in this mode where you've got one or the other, then whatever you're playing is not going to affect the other panel at all, okay? So I could play, for example, my piano, right? That's not going to mess with what I have here, which is currently like a pad sound, right? So that's not gonna mess with any of that stuff. And we'll talk about how to set all that stuff up. But I just wanna make sure, does that make sense to you guys, the panel stuff and how to switch that stuff? It's pretty straightforward, but it's just something that can easily kind of get lost in the mix if you're trying to mess with all this other stuff. So that's our basic layout. Okay, let's start to get into what it looks like to really start to dial in some of these sounds, especially for worship. So I'm just gonna go to an empty patch. Here's a perfect example. So we got nothing on right now, nothing going on the keyboard. Great. Let's start with the piano, okay? In my opinion, the piano is the most important engine because that's the core of our sound, right? That's where we get 99% of worship sound is coming from the piano. So you could just turn on the piano and just start going. And it sounds great. I mean, there's a reason why everybody loves the Nordic because it's got great piano sounds. But I would say that if you really want to get the sound out of it that you want and that best serves the song, it's important to know some of these other controls that you can get just within the piano engine itself, okay? So the primary controls here, just 2 primary controls that you really need to know, okay? It's the piano type switch, which allows you to change from grand pianos to upright pianos to electric pianos if you wanted to. You can even do a clav. Anybody like Stevie Wonder? Right? So that's fun. You can do stuff like that. But you've got a whole bunch of different options, okay? Obviously for worship, primarily we're gonna just stick to acoustic piano land, which will be either grand pianos or upright pianos, okay? The way you switch is simply by pressing this type button right here, and you'll see it, obviously when you guys come up later, it's really easy to see. And it just cycles. So you can press it 1,000 times and it'll just go through. It's very obvious to see which section you're currently on. The screen will also tell you as you're switching, okay, I'm in upright now. So that's super easy. The other control is really important to know that goes hand in hand with that is the piano model knob, okay? That's gonna allow you to change within the subcategory of grand piano or upright to get a specific piano sound that you want. So you see in the grand section, I've got the Royal Grand 3D, I've got the White Grand, I've got the Grand Lady. They got a whole bunch of options, okay? So my recommendation for you guys as you're kind of learning some of this stuff is when you're scheduled for a Sunday morning, like come just a few minutes early if you can, get your hands on the Nord. If you can bring like, obviously you have your in-ears, but if you can bring like some headphones or something and plug into the headphone jack and just kind of start to hear what these pianos sound like, it'll help you when you're trying to make decisions about what kind of sound you want to use for a given song or whatever the case may be. Personally, I really like the Royal Grand. I think it's a great piano. It's the first one out the box. Fun fact, this is the piano that Elevation uses basically 99% of the time. So if you want to sound like Elevation, use the Royal Grand 3D. It's a great option. I also really like the White Grand. Again, all kind of in the context of like worship music. The White Grand sounds really, really good. It's sort of a big, bright and full and rich sound. There's other good options too. The Italian Grand is good. And I'll give you guys kind of some examples of what these sound like. The Royal Grand is the classic sound. Right? There's some elevation for you. So that's a cool sound. White Grand sounds like this. So I might use that for a song like Praise. Just really, really bright and full. There's some nuance there. So again, just listen to these different piano sounds, find what works for you. The biggest difference obviously is if you're gonna go to an upright piano and start to pick some of those guys. So for a song like Give Me Jesus is a great example, okay? You might not wanna use, a big, giant, bright, Royal Grand 3D sound for a Give Me Jesus if you're trying to play something like, right? It works, but it's just a little much especially for that kind of song and for the moment. So you might wanna switch to an upright. My personal favorite for uprights is the mellow upright, okay? So again, you're gonna switch, go to upright, use your knob until you find the mellow upright, which is my personal favorite, and then you can play stuff like this. It's just real dark and mellow, hence the name mellow upright. So stuff like that comes in really, really handy when you're trying to find specific sounds for specific songs. Again, you don't have to do that. You can play the same piano for every single song on a Sunday morning. But I think, again, it really helps when you're trying to serve the song and the moment and all those kinds of things to be able to have some of these different sounds and timbres at your disposal. So those are the two main controls. Obviously, you have the on-off switch. You gotta know that, but you guys all know that already. So type, model knob, all that good stuff. If you wanna get really fancy with it, there's a couple advanced controls that you can also use to dial in your stuff. One example would be this timbre switch right here, okay? So if you guys have ever noticed before, there's a little thing called timbre, and that basically is just going to affect the tone of your piano. So you've got three options. Don't worry about the ones on the side here that say dyno. You guys can't read this right now, but it says soft, mid, and bright. Okay, those are your three options, and they just cycle through. You click it, it cycles through. So if I'm playing a song like Same God, okay? If I'm playing Same God, I'm playing the chorus. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. Let's say I'm going to a down moment here. I might turn on the soft. And now it's super dark and mellow. So even though I'm not really using an upright piano, which might work better in that case, I can still kind of achieve the same kind of dark quality, right? So we're in a down moment, everything's super mellow and soft. I can use this timbre to get to that place and then just cycle back through until it turns off. So I wanna get bigger, I can do that. So that's a cool way to very quickly sort of affect and shape the tone of your piano. Another one, this is really, really minute stuff. You guys might not even be able to hear it in the big PA, but you can use there's these buttons off here that affect the acoustics of the piano. So you can turn on a string resonance, which for any of my classical friends, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the fact that when you're playing an acoustic piano, right, you've got strings vibrating, and that's also going to affect some of the strings that you may not be playing, but they're gonna resonate in conjunction with the strings that are already vibrating. So the Nord has actually sampled those very same things. So if you want like super ultra realism, you can press this button up here to turn on string resonance. You also have what Nord calls soft release, which allows basically when you let the piano off, it just has smoother release time. It's not so jarring as just letting it go like this. Cuts off immediately as opposed to this. Just kind of like, again, a very slight, minute difference. So that's all advanced stuff. If you want to use that, it's there for you. You can also turn both of them on by just pressing it again, and you'll see both the lights are turned on. So just for some ultra realism, that's at your disposal. You don't have to use any of that. And again, for our worship stuff in a full band context, nobody out here is necessarily gonna hear that. But if we ever have a moment where it's just you, and a vocalist or anything like that, an acoustic worship set maybe, those could be really nice to add in for some extra realism. So all that to say, that's our piano sound. Okay, there's a lot of options. It's more than really just turning it on and going to get the sound that you wanna have. My biggest recommendation is, ultimately find a grand piano sound that you like, find an upright that you like, and just cycle between those two depending on the song. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, fantastic. So just a couple extra tips for really dialing that stuff in. Once you've got the sound that you like, you can come over to some of our handy dandy effects places. And I like to use a compressor. I talked about this earlier about squashing the dynamics. I like to use a compressor to really kind of keep things all in the same place. And I think it's important that as keys players, we stay in communication with our front of house people like Josue or Rain or Andy or any of those guys that are doing that. Because they may ask us, hey, I feel like you've got a lot of compression. Can you turn it back some? Or they might say, hey, I think you're clipping a little bit. You're getting a little too loud. Can you do something about that? When I hear that, the first thing I'm gonna go to is my compressor, because that will allow me to keep some of those really loud moments a little bit softer. What a compressor does, again, if you've ever seen a compressor or heard about compressors before, basically all it does is it takes the wide dynamic range of the piano and just brings it to a more consistent volume. Because I could play without the compressor on, I could play really soft and then get really loud, right? And that just becomes overwhelming and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And obviously in songs, we're gonna be going from up to down moments, interchangeably. So a compressor allows me to kind of reduce some of that excitement a little bit. So I turned it on. I like to hover anywhere between, and you can see the numbers change as you dial this in, anywhere between 4 to like 6-ish is usually good, just kind of a medium compression. I find to be really, really helpful for some of that stuff. And then what I like to do is, if you hold the shift button, turn on the compressor again, it'll turn on, can you guys see that? Yeah, it'll turn on this fast function, which basically just means the compressor will act immediately when you're pressing the keys. So you can already kind of hear right there, play without it, right? This is the same volume. Once I turn that compressor on, I'm gonna play at the same volume, watch what happens. It brings that volume up. So the quiet parts will become a little louder, and the louder parts will become a little bit quieter than, all that craziness. So compressor is really nice to just kind of keep everything nice and contained. I like to dial that in. We'll just say about there for now. And then the sweet spot, here's the fun stuff. Let's turn on the reverb, get that worship sound going. Okay, you've got 6 options for reverb. There's a lot of options. You've got 2 rooms, 2 stage reverbs, and 2 hall reverbs. My personal recommendation, use either the stage or the hall reverbs. In my opinion, those are the best. They sound super ambient, super washy, really, really good for worship stuff, right? So all you gotta do to switch that is press this black button here. You'll see them start to cycle. Let's go with hall 1 for now. That's gonna be your sort of biggest, washiest, longest sounding reverb, okay? The 2 halls specifically. And then let's just start to dial that in. So I'm gonna play a chord, maybe up here a little bit. And you'll hear as I start to turn that up, now we're like super ambient. That's probably overkill. Whoa. It's like the piano's like miles away. So I usually like to bring this back to, again, somewhere around the 4 or 5 range, just so you get like enough ambience to where it sounds worshipful, I guess you could say, but not too much to where you're getting muddy or you're starting to lose some of the articulation. So again, somewhere around, yeah, somewhere right there sounds really nice. Again, without it, and you'll see when I let go, it just dies instantly. But with the reverb on, I've got some of that sustain that happens afterwards. So that's really, really nice. That's pretty much it for pianos. Find your sound, Get a little bit of compression if you want to, and it's a lot easier to hear, especially when you've got your ears in. And then dial in that reverb, and you're good to go. Now, the good thing is, most of the presets that we have on the Nord pretty much already have this stuff ready to go for you guys. But this way, if there's something weird or something wonky, you guys at least kind of have an understanding of where different things might be at. Or if everything is going haywire, you can do what I did, find an empty sound and dial things in from scratch and just do it yourself. And I do want you guys to kind of get up and try this stuff out on your own as well. So let's move on to the synth section. This is where things get really fun and also really complicated. So bear with me. The synth engine is obviously the most complex engine. There's a whole lot of knobs, there's a whole lot of buttons, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. I find that when I'm trying to set up synth sounds or just makes, synth sounds that sound weird sound more normal, I really am only focusing on a couple different areas. So let's just hit on those real quick. The primary controls, okay, probably the most important one is this guy right here, okay? This is your main sort of preset knob for the synth specifically. So in the same way that you have a big old preset knob for the whole patch, you've got a preset knob for your synth specifically. And you can see they've got names. So you've got, can you guys read that? Yeah, you've got synth pads, you've got warm pads, super saws, all these different kinds of things. There's a lot of good options in here. And again, it's one of those things where you kind of have to get on and hear what they sound like, see if they're workable, if they work for our specific context. But here's a cheat code that I just recently discovered, okay? Hold shift. Shift, guys, I'm telling you, is one of your best friends because this will allow you to do a lot more with the keyboard than what's actually on it. If you see any of these controls on here that have like a word or a label underneath the specific parameter, that's gonna be the thing that's affected when you're holding the shift button, okay? So this button right here, can you guys see that? I think if you can read it, this button right here says mode right underneath it, okay? And it's attached to this preset knob, and you can choose either user sounds, which are the sounds that the Nord comes with, or samples, which have been downloaded into the Nord. Lucky for us, somebody, I don't know who, has loaded in a whole bunch of like worship pad samples. So we can just go and grab one of those and make that really easy. All we gotta do is hold shift and then tap this mode button right here, okay? Tap it until we get just the sample light to light up. I'm not sure you guys can see it. It's this little guy right here. Once that's on, now we can hold shift again and then start going through our different sounds. Okay, so all of these things right here, the Sunday pad, the cloud pad, the morning pad, those are all downloaded sounds. These are some strings that I've also been downloading here. Shimmer pad, I really like. It sounds really nice. Airy pad, warm pad. There's a whole bunch of stuff, okay? Keep going a little bit more. Huge pad, massive pad, worship drone. The point is, you've got 1,000 different options, okay? And they all sound pretty good. Here's the thing though, when you open it up from the get-go, it's going to sound like, whoa, that's really loud. How can I work with this? So let's just take this basically from scratch, okay? I'm gonna pick, which one you guys wanna pick? Massive pad, huge pad? Let's do massive pad? Let's do massive pad, why not? Let's see what this sounds like, okay? I have no idea what this is gonna sound like out the box. Woo! So that's pretty loud, pretty gross. Doesn't sound like a pad at all, right? But we're gonna make it sound like a pad, okay? Watch this. So let's exit. We've got our massive pad, which sounds massively awful right now. And we're gonna do a couple tweaks to it, okay? The first thing I will do when I'm trying to get a pad to sound more like a pad, come over to this knob right here, okay? This is our frequency knob, okay? And this is going to allow us to adjust the brightness or the darkness of the tone, okay? So I'm gonna take this all the way at the top. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit so I'm not blasting you guys' eardrums. Okay, so that's what it sounds like right now. Watch what happens when I hold this. Okay, we're gonna just turn that guy way down. So now we've got a much darker sound, okay, as opposed to, we don't want that. We just want this right here, okay? Nice and mellow and dark. Okay, so that's the first thing I'll do, just to control that, because I don't want to listen to that any longer than I have to, okay? Control that with the frequency knob, and you can do this for any pad that you have. They'll all do the same thing, okay? Then what I want to do is to get it to be more smooth, and when I'm transitioning between chords, right now it's kind of like, it's very like synthy, and it's very like, I guess synth leady, you might say. I'll come over to this section right here, okay? This is our amp envelope, a lot of fancy words. All this allows us to do is basically shape how fast the sound comes in, how long it lasts for, and how long it takes to fade away when we let go of the keys, okay? So our attack, think about attack being like, you're punching in, right? So the attack is going to be how long it's gonna take the sound to come into play, okay? So I'm gonna turn our decay all the way up to sustain so that no matter how long I hold this keyboard for, it's gonna go. Let's dial in our attack first, okay? So you'll notice at the very beginning, when I play, it comes right in. If I turn this attack up, let's say about 3 seconds, it's gonna take 3 seconds to get to its highest volume. So watch this. And now we're there, okay? So I wanna dial this in to where it feels like it's not right immediately, but it's not taking too long as well. So I still get the sound when I'm changing chords, okay? So let's go, I'm just playing B flat for a second. And let's find that sweet spot. That's already sounding pretty good. Somewhere around 500 or 600 milliseconds. As you're adjusting it again, you can see exactly how long your timing is. Let me get my hand out the way. See if I can do it. Yeah, see that over here? You guys got it. So let's go to about right there. Yeah, sounded more like a pad, almost. Okay, so we've got our attacks dialed in. Now let's adjust the release, which is basically the opposite end of the attack. Okay, so this is how long it's going to release the sound, right? Until it comes back down to 0. So let's hold this pad. Let's go. Usually if I get the attack and the release around the same time, that usually sounds pretty good. So let's try around there. And I'm gonna let go. You see it kind of fades out a little bit. So now let's see what it sounds like when I transition chords. Less release because you see how they're kind of bleeding into each other a little bit. Let's try that. Yeah. I think that sounds pretty good. All right, so now we've at least kind of controlled the sound a little bit. Let's add some reverb because reverb sounds awesome, right? So I'm gonna turn this guy up just a smidge, maybe to about right there. One thing that I'm noticing with this pad specifically is it's kind of muddy, right? So this is a great time for us to talk about our EQ because you'll hear when I get down here, it's just like super kind of rumbly and warbly. So what I might do is I'll come over to my EQ section, turn on my EQ, and if there's a little handy thing you can do, again, shift being your best friend. If you hold shift, you can now switch to the different sources on your EQ. So I say, okay, I want my EQ to be affecting the synth. I hold shift and tap this until I get to the synth button, which is right there, okay? Now when I adjust this EQ, it's going to adjust just the pad, okay? If you've never messed with EQ before, all it is again, it's a way to adjust the tone, okay? So imagine when you're playing a pad, you've got this frequency spectrum where your sound is, all the sound waves are bouncing together and doing all kinds of cool stuff, okay? You've got bass, which is obviously your deeper stuff. You've got mids, which live in the middle. And you've got your trebles, which is the highs, okay? You can adjust all three of those things independently of each other. So if I'm hearing some muddiness, that's generally happening in the bass range. So I might go in and take some bass out, right? If I crank it, whoa, now we're getting super bassy. Let's turn that back about 10 dB down, okay? Take some of that out. And I might even take out some mids as well. Take out some of the real muddy middle ranges. You can adjust the volume of the mids and you can actually adjust the frequency as well. So imagine like you've got this scoop that now you're basically sweeping across the different frequencies to find just that sweet spot. So if I turn this up, you can really hear it. If I go like this, whoa, hear that kind of like, oh, like honkiness. It's not a good sound. So we want to take that away. So I'm gonna turn that down to about 8 dB. So it's a little less muddy than it was before. I think this sound in general is just kind of a muddy sound. So maybe we wouldn't pick this in the future, but for the purpose of showing you guys that we can make decent sounds out of any sample, this is good. So I've got that. I may even take out some of the highs as well because it's really just kind of like, I don't like that much. okay? So we've got our pad sound now. It was a lot better than it was before when it was just screaming at us. So let's bring back our piano and just see if we can kind of dial these things in together. You can hear that, especially as they get higher. You can hear that pad kind of sitting in the background. So that's not a bad sound at all. That's not terrible. Not necessarily something I would probably work with. I'd probably go in and find a different pad sound, but for the sake of time, I wanted to work with the one that we picked. Here's something really cool that I want you guys to take notice of. I think I've mentioned this to some of you guys before. You can use the synth engine as a tonic drone pad, which basically means you can have a pad sound going, and it not be changing as you're changing chords, okay? This is something that I really like to do. I think this is something that a lot of churches and worship teams and keys players specifically are actually going to nowadays. Because what happens is, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, sometimes when you're playing a whole bunch of notes, if you're like me, you like to really fill space, right? And play a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. And the pad is following everything that you're doing. Sometimes that can get kind of muddy, right? Especially when you're down here, and doing all this kind of stuff. So that's not always the best thing to do. What you can do to get around that and still maintain your playing style, especially if you're someone that likes to fill a lot of space, is you can have the Nord play a tonic pad, which I'll show you what that sounds like in a second, have that just go and sustain forever on the same sort of, the tonic being like the one chord, right? The home base of the key that you're playing, and just have it go. And then you can just play a piano over top of that, and it sounds really, really nice. That's how I like to do it, and I'm gonna show you guys how to set that up. It's really, really cool. So let's get rid of what we have there. Let's turn that guy off. This is where panel A and panel B really come into play, okay? For now, we've done everything on panel A, and you can do everything, and it sounds great, whatever. Let's go to panel B for a second. Let's find our pad sound, okay? So we're gonna go to panel B. We're gonna dial in our pad sound real quick. I'm just gonna tell you guys right now, I really like the shimmer pad, okay? So again, we're gonna go shift, change the mode to sample until we see the sample light up, and then we're gonna go find our shimmer pad by switching this knob. There it is, shimmer pad. This is my personal favorite when it comes to using a tonic pad player, okay? So right now, here's what it sounds like just out the box. Already, it's just like, that's pretty cool. That sounds like a worship pad right there, okay? But it's just like any other pad, right? I play it, I let go, and it ends, okay? Check this out. I'm gonna turn these guys off for a second. There's a little handy button right here called keyboard hold. I don't think you guys can quite read it on the screen, but it's right here at the bottom of your synth section, keyboard hold. When you turn that on, any note that you play is just gonna sustain forever, okay? So if I play, again, like a C, like a big old kind of C power chord, just C, G, C, G. Watch this. And I can just walk away. I can just get up, see you guys tomorrow, and it'll just keep going forever. This is really, really handy because, remember how I mentioned the panels and how whatever panel you're on, if you've got them separated, it's not going to affect the other panel. Let's let that keep going. I'm gonna go to panel A. Pad's still going. Let's dial in our piano sound. Watch this. That pad is still going. No matter what I play, that pad's gonna keep going. So I really like this. You guys can hear, that is like, it's just beautiful. It's butter. It sounds so nice. I say butter a lot when I like describing music sounds. But anyways, I think this sounds really, really nice. All you have to do, so that's obviously if you're just gonna play in C. All you gotta do to change the key, go back to panel B, okay? And the moment you play new notes, those are gonna become the new tonic pad. Okay, so let's say I wanna play in E flat, all right? My philosophy when I'm doing this is I'm just gonna play, if you guys are familiar with numbers, I'll go back to the letters in a second. But for those of us who know numbers, I'm gonna play a 1, a 5, and then maybe another 1, another 5. But I'm only going to play those 2 scale degrees, the 1 and the 5, okay? Because that gives you the sound, it gives you the effect of like a drone pad, okay? So in E flat, that would be E flat and B flat, okay? I'm just gonna play those notes. And you see it changes immediately. Pretty smooth transition, and we're gonna dial this in even a little bit more to make it even more smooth. So now I'm at E flat, go back to A, I'm on my piano, and I can just play my piano sound, and it's not affecting anything, right? So we're playing a song like, what are we playing? We're playing Same God, right? Same God. Okay, we're gonna play it in C this week. So I'll go back to my panel A, play my C pad, go back to A, and now we're in Same God. So that works, I mean, it works perfectly. It sounds, and especially in the context of the mix, sounds really, really good. So that's cool by itself, but let's make it so that we can have full control of this and it's really easy and really smooth, okay? So let's turn this guy off for just a second. Actually, I'm just gonna turn the keyboard hold off so it stops. All right, so we've got our keyboard hold on. We definitely want that on so we can get the effect. While that's going, I'm gonna dial in some other effects to make it sound really, really nice, okay? So here's where some of the effects come into play, okay? Effect 1, let's start here. Turn that guy on, use shift to switch to the synth, okay? I really like this A pan. Can you guys read that maybe? Yeah, it says A pan, okay? What that stands for is auto pan. Basically what that's doing is you've got our keyboards. You ever heard the term stereo, mono, all that kind of stuff? Okay, our keys are running in stereo right now. This is really important for us to know, which means it's got a left and a right sound, okay? The auto pan, what that's gonna do is it's gonna take the sound of whatever it's affecting and basically move it from left to right, like this. Put your hands up, right, just like that. So you can use this to add some movement, and it sounds really, really nice if you just dial it in ever so slightly. Nobody's gonna kind of notice, but it's gonna be kind of a feel thing, especially in a big room like this, where you've got speakers on this side, you've got speakers on this side. So what I like to do is set that A pan, which is basically the default sound anyways, okay? I'm gonna turn up the amount to somewhere around the 5 or 6 range. Okay, I'm gonna turn the rate way down, because what that's gonna do is it's gonna really slowly move from left to right, okay? And it's just gonna give it like a really nice ambient sort of moving feeling. So that'll be effect 1. Effect 2, I'm gonna throw on some chorus. Chorus, just honestly, it's what it sounds like. It sounds like a chorus or a choir of people, choir of synth voices kind of playing at once. It's a really nice ambient, again, washy, textural kind of effect. So a similar thing here. I'm just gonna kind of go for a middle of the range amount and a middle-ish sort of rate. Whoever's back there, whether it's Sway or Raina, can you guys turn my keys up just a little bit so they can kind of hear this effect? Make sure that they can kind of hear what's going on this end. Yeah, there it is. So if I turn this way up, you'll start to kind of hear some like a little bit of warbleness. I don't know how else to describe it. We're describing sounds. So I'm gonna just dial that in just to make, again, we're all trying to just give it movement, just to give it a feeling like it's moving somewhere and not just kind of staying in the same place. That's gonna really give it the effect that this is a soundscape. This is like a sound bed that's filling space. So I like to use both the effects for the synth. There it is. You guys hear that? It's pretty cool. So I like to use both of those for that to really get the sound where I want it. And then of course, we gotta use reverb because that's the worship sound. We have to use it. So let's go to stage 2 or hall 1, any of those. Let's just turn that up a little bit just to really give it a nice ambient effect. Okay, now this is really cool because when I switch to any other pad sound, you'll have a much smoother transition because of the reverb. So let's go to G, right? I could go to D if I wanted to. It's just like, they're just crossing over. It's really nice. The last thing that I do want to do is, remember how we talked about the amp envelopes? Just to make sure that transition is really smooth, I'm gonna go ahead and dial in this attack and release, just to make sure that it's doing exactly what I want it to do. So let's turn the attack up to about 1 second, and a release to around the same, maybe slightly shorter than that. So now, with all that turned on, we got this. Beautiful ambient pad, and I can change if I need to. And you see how one fades and the other one comes back in. That's really nice. That's the kind of transition that we want. Last thing for this thing, this will make your life 1,000 times easier, okay? Up here, you'll see a little section. You guys can't read it, but it says morph assign, okay? On the morph assign section, this is going to allow you to take some of these different pieces over here, like you guys can see it on the camera, but the mod wheel, you guys have seen this little gray guy, okay? You can map this to the volume of your synth pad, your drone pad, okay? This is really handy because when you're playing your piano and you're on panel A, you no longer have access to that volume until you switch to panel B. But instead of doing that, why don't we just stay on our piano sound and control the volume of the panel B sound with the mod wheel? So, because that's not going anywhere, right? So watch this. We're gonna hold morph assign, we're gonna hold the wheel button, okay? And what you have to do in order to set this up right is turn the volume all the way down to start, okay? Hold the wheel button, and then once you start turning this, you guys will see the screen over here. It's gonna start to move. It'll say, okay, synth level from off all the way up to however loud we think we're gonna wanna go with it. So let's just go, I usually like to keep mine a little bit quieter than piano, so like negative 2.5 dB. Okay, when I let that go, watch this. You see this guy, this little light right here? As I move the wheel, it's gonna move the volume up, okay? So now that allows me, whatever panel I'm on, I'm going back to panel A, I'm playing my piano. What key am I in? D, okay, yeah. So now, I can take that out, I can bring it back in. So let's put this in context, okay? Check this out. Let's say Pastor Rod, he's finishing up his sermon, right? That's why you need to put your faith in Jesus. You get the text, hey, ready for keys? Get up here. First thing I'm gonna do, panel B. All right, I've got my sound, it's ready to go. Whatever the key of the song is, we're gonna sing Firm Foundation in A, okay? I'm gonna play my 1-5-1 or my first scale degree and my fifth scale degree, okay, in whatever key we're playing. So in that case, it'll be A, E, A, E, okay? I'm gonna just play that. That should sound pretty good. Now it's going, even though nothing is happening yet, because I know I've got my mod wheel mapped, okay? So I'm gonna turn it up, he's talking, he's doing his thing. Here comes the pad, he's talking, and I'm not even playing anything. I'm literally just letting the pad do its thing, okay? So he's saying what he's doing. Now, you could just leave it and just sit here until he's done. You could do that, but you're sitting for, who knows, 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on how long he goes. What I like to do personally is I like to add some piano in while I'm underscoring. Don't be afraid to really kind of listen to whether it's Pastor Rod or Kyle or Josh or whoever is up here. Don't be afraid to really listen in on what they're saying and like, in a way, sort of interpret what they're saying musically. So if he's in a place where he's really trying to get people's attention, he's got a come to Jesus moment or something like that, I'm gonna listen to that and be like, okay, I wanna support what he's saying. So I might play something like, and this is all interpretive, it's all subjective, but this is kind of how my brain thinks about it. If I'm in E or if I'm in A, right, he's saying, we just gotta trust in Jesus. Because we know he's the only one who can satisfy our every desire. Right, I'm not even playing a song necessarily. I'm just playing in the key, trying to follow what he's saying. We call this talk music in gospel circles and other places. You can call it underscoring, whatever you want to call it. Right? But don't be afraid to really kind of, like I said, to interpret and take us as a congregation somewhere musically in those moments. It doesn't just have to be a pad, and it doesn't just have to be the chord progression of the song that we're about to play. You have freedom in that space. Now, I would say, again, we don't want to be a distraction. We don't want to take away from what's happening on the stage, but we want to enhance it. We want to elevate it. We want to support it. So that's why, hopefully, whenever we get up here, we can kind of hear Pastor Rod in our in-ears or whatever the case may be. If you've got to take an ear out, that's fine too. But really be paying attention to what they're doing, what the room is doing, right? Like where the moments are going. I go back to the point of serving the moment, serving the song, all that kind of stuff. So don't be afraid to do that. I love to just sit here and let the music do the talking, right? So anyways, that's a whole other conversation. We can have a whole other workshop about like talk music specifically. But that's a really cool way to put this kind of thing in context. It makes your job as a, when people say, oh, just play a pad. Well, you're like, okay, there's my pad. Now what else can I do, right? So that's a really cool way to do that. And then obviously, once we've made all these changes, we can go ahead and hit the store button. If you've ever saved a patch before, you know this, but all you gotta do to save a patch, and I'll just do it for now, it doesn't really matter. You hit store, it'll ask you, okay, you wanna store the program? Yeah, I'll store it. Boom. Now, all those changes that I just made are now saved to this particular patch, which was empty before, so it doesn't really matter. A cool thing I just found out, this is, again, random stuff if you guys wanna know it, is you can actually name the patches. I should have known this ahead of time. If you hold Shift, your best friend, and press the store button, it comes up this little menu, okay? And I think you guys can see it a little bit. On the screen, it'll say like ABC if you hold this button right here that's corresponding to it. And now I can literally scroll through and pick the different letters that I want. So let's just call it, I don't know, L. Oh, I was gonna try to do LOL, but oh well, it's fine, you get the idea. You save it, and now you have whatever kind of crazy name that you wanna name it to. So that's another cool thing, we're just saving features. So all that to say, okay, that's what I was talking about earlier about having two different ways to kind of do the pad. You can do the normal way, which we've done forever, of playing a piano and a pad at the same time, which, right? We got our pad going. Beautiful sound. But personally, I like to do the tonic pad and get the piano with it as well. So I've actually just gone in and saved a couple presets myself. I might change the name of this. I named it DG Worship 1, but I might change it to FW for Fairfax Worship. And I might call it Grand 1 or something like that. But I've got piano patches set up with the tonic pad. If you guys ever want to go and use them, you'll have to just commit it to memory. It's in the M section. It's one of the very first M ones, so you just scroll far enough, you'll find it. DG1, this one is already named the way I want to. This is an upright piano with the tonic pad in it, so I could go, same concept. I've already gone and dialed the sounds. We've got our E-flat pad. We've got our piano. So, anyways, that's sort of the rundown when it comes to the Nord stuff. I know it's a whole lot of stuff. Questions? That's a great question. I mean, yeah, I would leave it running because it's not gonna get in the way of anything. And I think if anything, it just kind of adds another layer to the sound as a whole. It acts as sort of a sound bed. The funny thing is, a lot of the tracks that we use sometimes will have like pads in them. Sometimes they won't, and especially, in between songs and all that kind of stuff. So that's a personal thing. If you don't wanna have it in there, and once everybody's kind of in, again, all you gotta do is just pull that mod wheel back and you're good to go. And then once the song's kind of coming down, you can sneak it back in. So you have the freedom to do with that what you want. Personally, I would just leave it in because like I said, I don't think it takes away and it doesn't get in the way of anything. So I like to just keep it in there. And especially because I've got the keys turned up in my in-ear mix, I like to just be able to hear that as I'm playing along. So just a personal thing. You can do with that whatever you want. But having the mod wheel controlling that is really, really helpful. Any other questions? I know we went through a whole lot of stuff, but anything you guys want me to go back and touch on or explain further? Would you guys like to come up and kind of see some of this stuff up close? Yes, Grace. Totally. That is a fantastic question. So I would say, I think it depends on the song. I think for a song like, let's say a song like Praise. Let me go back to my Royal Grand song. For a song like Praise, obviously we're pretty much up and big the whole time. And the keys, the way I think about it is kind of like how the keys specifically are fitting into the rest of the mix. So for a song like Praise or a more fast upbeat song, a song like I Thank God, which I know we're doing as well this upcoming Sunday, those kinds of songs, in my opinion, the dynamics aren't necessarily as important because you kind of just have one dynamic the whole time. So a song like that, I would really like to use a compressor. And probably a pretty aggressive compressor at that so that I can maintain that kind of level no matter what. It's, I think, especially helpful, again, for our front of house people in that regard, because no matter whether I'm in a verse or chorus, whatever, I'm kind of keeping that consistent volume. You still have a little bit of dynamic. It's not gonna take everything away, especially if you're just kind of dialing it in and not going all out with it. But I would say for a song like Gimme Jesus or a more mellow song, I don't know if we've ever done Nothing Else, but that's another great example. But something where you do kind of want to have that dynamic, then I would turn it down a little bit. I would still have a little bit of it, because what happens is, especially for an upright piano sound, what you're able to get beyond just the dynamics is you can really start to control sort of the sustain of the piano. So what happens, if you can kind of imagine with me for a second, I wish I had put up a picture of it so you could really see what's going on. But imagine, right, if the compressor is, let's say it's like a needle, okay, right? And the moment you play, right, it's going to immediately start affecting the sound. As the piano fades out, that compressor is gonna start to release, right? Because there's not as much coming through. But when you've got the compressor turned up, what happens is it's almost like forcing the piano to sustain a little bit longer. So I like to use it for that reason sometimes, especially in a song, like I said, like Gimme Jesus, where if I'm holding out sort of long chords, I can use the compressor to really sort of stretch that sound out. So I can hit a big old chord and hold the sustain pedal, and it's still going just a little bit. And now it's kind of gone. But without the compressor, you can sometimes lose some of that sustain. So that's another reason. But again, it's really kind of a personal preference thing. You absolutely definitely do want to have dynamics in a song like that, like Gimme Jesus, where you're kind of going through mellow moments. But you can hear even right here, without the compressor, it's like the piano's pretty much gone now. With it on, you've got that longer sustain. So there are other things to it besides the dynamics as well, and I should have mentioned that earlier, but that's a great question. Again, kind of personal preference, just dialing in and really coming down to like your playing style as well. So if you're someone that likes to really kind of bang on the chords, a compressor might be a good thing. If you're kind of more flowy, then maybe you want a little bit less compression. So just, again, all personal preference and understanding. If you know what the compressor does, then you can decide if you want to use it or not. So that's what I was saying. Does that answer your question, Grace? Okay, great. Any other questions about any of that stuff? Need to go back and do something? David. Right, you mean like these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons? So that's a great question. So what I know from this is you've basically got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to rotate through the specific bank that you're in. I wish I would have learned, oh, here we go. I just figured it out. So that's, okay. There it is. So the way you can do it, it's got the 5 programs of whatever bank and page that you're in. So the banks is the letter, okay? Right now we're in bank M, and you got, right, bank L. You got all these different ones. These are all like specific Nord patches. So let's go back to, I think the worship patches start in N. That's kind of where all our main like worship patches that we usually use are in. And then you've got pages, which are the first number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think you have 5 pages. And then each page has 5 programs or patches that you can use by using these different buttons. So you're not just limited to the 5, you've really got a plethora of patches that you can use, but these 5 allow you to get to a couple of different patches quickly. Another cool thing that it kind of goes in hand with that is, I didn't really talk about this at all yet, but you've got a live mode button. The live mode basically allows you to get to your 5 favorites. And what's cool about the live mode as opposed to just using the regular program thing is that any changes you make and then switching to a new patch will be saved automatically. So you don't have to use the store button to save those changes. So that can be really handy. Let's say, if you're wanting to use kind of 2 primary piano sounds and you're going back and forth between them, and you, let's say you adjust the reverb of 1 at the end of the song, and you go to patch 2 and you come back, now you've kind of still got that same washy reverb sound, and you won't have to necessarily redial it in or anything like that. So that's another way to do it. I haven't gone in yet to actually make 5 really good usable presets yet. I do want to do that, and I'll let you guys know when that happens. But if you want to do that for a specific Sunday rehearsal or whatever, you can also do this. I mean, if you really want to get specific with it, you could do it for one song. You could have an intro, patch, so to speak, and then you could have a chorus patch, and you could be changing the compressor levels. You could be changing the reverbs depending on the section of the song that you're in. That's one way to do that. But I'm getting off tangent now. To answer your original question, you're not just limited. You can use the program knob to scroll. You can use, again, these page buttons. If you hold shift, you'll switch the banks, which is the letter again. And then, so it's just categories. It's like sections of 5 at a time. So I've got I've got basically 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Next page would be 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So it's just in 5s. You're not gonna get a 26 or anything like that. Does that answer your question? That makes sense. Okay, sweet. Anybody else? And there's a whole lot of stuff, fire hose stuff. And this stuff, again, will become more familiar to you guys as you get on the board and get your hands on it. I think we've got it also recorded up to the Fairfax production website, so you guys can go back and refer to that whenever you need to. But yeah, I know we're a little bit over time that I wanted to, but if you guys want to come up, if you have the time and you want to come up and kind of get your hands on and try some of the stuff out, you're more than welcome. I'll be here. Obviously, for the rest of you guys, if you have to go, do what you got to do. But anyways, that is the Nord Training Workshop. Thank you guys for being here and being a part of it and learning along with me. So I hope it was helpful. And yeah, anyways. Yeah, thank you guys. Absolutely. Looking forward to making these things happen. So it should be fun. Gracie, you're first up to try some of this stuff out. So you also don't have to incorporate any of the things we talked about. You can just keep doing what you're doing. But at least now you have a language and a knowledge and all that kind of stuff. So let's go. Bro, absolutely. Come on. No, dude, you're good, man.
Elaborate on the pages and numbers thing, just so you guys
yes.
know you see.
Yep. So. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. So you see here, this is kind of your main scroll button, okay? And on the top, you've got page, which is the default that it's going to control. So you'll see it's controlling that first number. Okay. Right? You can go through, I think for each bank, each letter, you've got 5 pages. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. If you want to change the bank or the letter quickly, you can hold the shift button. Remember how I said the shift button, the bottom one. So now you can change the bank by holding shift. So that'll change the letter. And then within whatever bank and page that you're in, now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different patches per bank per page, if that makes sense. That makes sense. So 2 controls here, and then 1 extra control here to get to those different things really quickly. You can also just scroll between them, and they'll just go in order until you jump to the next page. And then eventually you keep scrolling, you'll jump to the next bank. Okay. Yeah, the next letter, exactly.
So I guess just from my own understanding too, what does bank mean and what does page mean?
Yeah, great question. So imagine it's they're like buckets, okay, individual kind of buckets. So a bank is in the same way that a bank holds a lot of money. Yeah. A bank on this thing will hold basically a lot of patches. It's just a way for us as players to store our different sounds. Okay. There's really no necessarily rhyme or reason to the M bank is all pianos and the L bank. There's really nothing to that. Okay. But I will say, again, whoever kind of originally came in and added some of these presets in here, the N, that's mostly where kind of our sounds are living right now. So you see a grand piano pad, it's got the worship drone, the felt pad, all that kind of stuff. So N generally I would say is the go-to if you just kind of want to get a sound quickly. M, on the other hand, is pretty empty right now. Okay. So if you guys want to go in and make your own sound, that's where I added my own personal thing, because it's pretty much all this. So this page is empty, this page is empty, this page is empty. And you'll see as I'm rotating, it's switching to these different numbers. So if you guys want to go in and make your own sounds, feel free to do that. So the bank, again, is kind of the big overall grouping of, I guess, what would that be, 5 times 5, 25 total sounds. And the page has 5 sounds individually. So you got page with one page with 5 sounds, another page with 5 sounds, another.